What's up, you guys? This is Tyler from the Herrintons, or back with a brand new video. This past week, Panasonic announced its highly awaited successor to the popular GH4, the GH5, and the internet is buzzing about it. So far, the footage that's been released online, the sample footage, looks absolutely beautiful. Now, there's been a ton of talk in the Wedding Film School Facebook group this past week about the GH5. Is it better than the A7S Mark II? Should you buy it to shoot weddings? All sorts of conversation about it. And it's led me to ask the bigger question, what should you consider as a wedding filmmaker when you're purchasing a new camera? Wedding filmmaking is very unique compared to other types of filmmaking, so I think there's certain things that are more important to a wedding filmmaker than may be important to someone who's shooting documentaries or shooting stories, anything like that. I think there's a little bit of a different set of parameters that you need to evaluate the cameras against. So I've made a list of 5 things that I think that you should consider when purchasing a new camera. And at the end, I'll give my opinion as to whether or not I think the GH5 is a good camera for wedding filmmakers. Okay, so right off the bat, before we even get started, let's talk about a few disclaimers. One, this is just my opinion. I'm not trying to say that this is fact or anything like that. This is just my opinion, what I think. But I really just want to open up a discussion for people as a little bit of, as to, okay, why are we purchasing these things? What is important to us as wedding filmmakers? And how does that impact what we buy? I just want to open up the discussion, kind of have it out there. Again, these are just my opinions. I'm not saying that you're wrong or that anything like that. I just want you to consider these things when purchasing a new camera. All right, so number 2, I do believe that it's really important to invest in good glass over a new camera. Right before we even all this discussion about cameras, I just want to say right off the bat, I think glass is more important. Your camera is only as good as the glass you put in front of it. Lenses will hold their value a lot longer than a camera, all this sort of stuff. So although this is obviously a video about purchasing cameras, I just want to make it public knowledge that I do think that lenses are way more important than cameras. And 3, I do understand that you can make a wedding film, a great wedding film, with any camera. My friends White and Reverie, they just created an entire amazing wedding film shooting on the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus. Now, obviously, there was a little bit of a special circumstance, things like that, but you can make great wedding films with any camera. These points are just to help you to take into consideration to make sure you can find the best camera for you. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's get into the list. The first thing to consider when purchasing a new camera for wedding filmmaking is price. Now, this may seem like a weird place to start, but the reality is that everybody has a budget. You got to be realistic with your budget and find the best camera that fits within it. So hopefully the rest of this list will help you to find just that, the best camera that you can afford within your price range. Now, as far as budgets go, I do not think that you should spend all of your budget, all of your money on getting the latest and greatest and best camera out there. I think that investing in good lenses and in good audio equipment will have a much bigger impact on the quality of your films than a brand new camera. So keep that in mind when you're going to purchase something. Don't necessarily tap out your entire budget getting the super expensive camera body and not leave yourself any budget left for audio gear or lenses, because ultimately, it's hard to make a really great film with a really great camera body and nothing else. So the second thing to consider when purchasing a camera is practicality, versatility, and functionality of that camera. Wedding days are fast-paced. You need a camera that you can work with easily and quickly to nail the shot the very first time, every single time. There's no do-overs, there's no, can you go back and do that again? You've got to nail the shot, get everything right in camera the first time. Regardless of your style, you need a camera that can handle anything a wedding day throws at you. You're outside in the heat, you're inside, you're in cars, you're driving your stuff around, you're transporting it all over the place. There's just a million different things going on in a wedding day, and you need a camera that can keep up with you and the fast-paced style of a wedding. Here are some of the practicality and functionality things that I think are really important to consider when buying a camera for shooting weddings. One would be battery life. Obviously wedding days are long, you're shooting for a long period of time. You need a camera that has decent battery life, or you need to just accept the fact that you're going to be changing batteries constantly and that you have to be charging them throughout the day. Again, you kind of have to decide what's most important to you, but for me, I love having a long battery life camera that I don't have to worry about. The second thing is just getting a really well exposed image and how easily that is. So as far as where the knobs are and navigating through menus and just doing all the different things that you need to do to get a well exposed image, this needs to be happening really quickly, and you need to be able to really rely on your camera that what you're shooting is going to look good in the final frame. Unlike certain types of filmmaking, you don't have the ability of looking at necessarily a big monitor, playing it back on the camera, checking everything for focus, all that kind of stuff. You've got to be able to make sure you get it right there really quickly every single time. And the tools that the cameras can have to help you nail all these different things are also, I think, important to consider. So things like zebras and peaking and waveform monitors, and if there's an electronic viewfinder, all these different things that help you to really make sure you're gonna nail that exposure. You need to kind of figure out, does this camera have these things, yes or no? And then of course, just the really practical things, like is there a flip out screen? Is that something that's important to you? Do you need something like a flip out screen? Are there lots of buttons? How is the menu system? Is the menu system easy to use? Is it fast? Is it slow? How long does it take you to boot up the camera from picking it up, turning it on to taking a shot? How long does that take? Little things like this that may seem small and may be kind of hard to tell from a spec sheet you're looking at on the internet, but are really, really important on a wedding day when things are happening really fast. And then of course there's things like record time, overheating, just general processing power of the camera, all these different things that you need to take into consideration that could come up as potential problems on a wedding day. All right, so the third thing to consider when choosing a camera is the lens selection that's available for that camera you're looking into buying. If you have been Canon for a really long time and you're really invested in Canon glass, you need to take that into consideration because buying lenses is very, very expensive. So if you're gonna switch to Sony or Panasonic or anything else, you need to consider, are you gonna be using your Canon glass? Can you use an adapter? How much is it gonna cost to sell your glass and buy new? All these different things need to be taken into consideration. You also need to consider the lens ecosystem of this camera that you're switching to. Certain camera manufacturers have a vast variety of lenses. Canon, for example, has a ton, hundreds of lenses that you can purchase, whereas some of the other camera bodies, Sony, Panasonic, don't have quite as many. So what you need to do is look and see, okay, what kind of lenses do you enjoy shooting with? What kind of lenses are important to you? And does the camera that you're switching to or thinking about buying, does it offer what you need? Just doing a little bit of research about the types of lenses available, their cost, the functionality of them, all these different things will help you, I think, in making a decision about purchasing a new camera. The fourth thing to consider is processing power of your computer and hard drive space. Now, 4K obviously is great. 4K is the next thing in video and it's kind of where the industry is heading. But I think that our computers are lagging behind a little bit. So when you're buying a new camera, you need to consider the computer setup that you have that you're planning on editing with, as well as your hard drive situation, because 4K is 4 times the amount of data and information that you're getting from 1080p. So if you're planning on buying this fancy 4K camera to shoot in 4K, but your computer can't handle it, so you can't edit it and it's gonna slow down your workflow, or you don't have the hard drive space to hold everything, it's probably not gonna work out too well for you. So taking those extra things in consideration, I think are really important when looking and buying a new camera. All right, so the fifth and the final thing to consider, in my opinion, is image quality. Now, I think that sometimes this kind of can get flipped on its head and people are looking so much at image quality and at sharpness and at, 422 color space versus 420 and 60 frames per second at 4K and all these different things, which, have their place and can be useful, but I don't think that should be the first thing that you're using to determine if this is the right camera for you. I think that the practicality and all the different things that I've mentioned above this should trump image quality, especially for wedding films. Now, this may seem sort of like a weird thing because obviously everyone wants their wedding films to look really good and they want them to be the best, highest quality possible. And I think that they do to a certain extent. I think that there is a point of diminishing return where the bride and the people watching the film and YouTube compression and Vimeo, all these different things are gonna kind of cap out how much quality there can actually be in this wedding film. And if you're fighting the camera all day and you're struggling to get the shot and it's just hard to deal with certain factors and it's overheating and all these different things, but you have a really great looking image, it's not really, in my opinion, worth the trade-off. I think that the functionality and the ease of use and all the different things that you need for a wedding day to get the shots that you need and to really nail them on the first time every time trumps quality, trumps image quality to a certain extent. Obviously, there's a baseline of quality that you need to have in order to make your films look really good. But as we talked about earlier, I think that you can get that from lenses that give you a huge bump in quality in the way that your films look. And the camera can only do so much to add to that image quality if you don't have good lenses in front of it. But of course we know that on wedding days, it's very unpredictable. The lighting is changing constantly. You're in a huge variety of lighting situations throughout the entire day. Sometimes you're inside with window light, sometimes you're outside in the bright sun, sometimes you're in a really dark church. Like, you need a camera that can keep up with all those different things and perform well across all of the situations. So when it comes to image quality, I think things that you should look into and really consider are the dynamic range, how well does it handle from the brightest brights to the darkest darks, high ISO performance. A lot of times for weddings, we find ourselves shooting in really dark situations where you need to crank the ISO up and you can't bring in lights. So you have to have a camera that can hang in those high ISO situations. And of course, the overall just color and skin tone and overall like tonality of the image. You want it to be pleasing, you want it to look good. Brides like to look good. All these different things are important. But I just want to reiterate and just kind of like drive home that I don't think that quality alone should be the only thing or even the first thing that you're determining when buying a new camera. All right, so the moment you've all been waiting for, should you buy the GH5 to shoot weddings? My answer is going to be maybe, which I know is kind of a cop-out, but let me explain. So if you're brand new to wedding filmmaking, this is your first camera, or you're just starting to get into it, I don't think that the GH5 is going to be the camera for you. It's just too tricky of a camera. There's too many things that can go wrong, and you have to kind of work with it perfectly in order to get a really good image. In order to get a great looking image with the GH5, or any of the Panasonic cameras for that matter, you just have to have a really good technical understanding of the color profiles, of the, it's a very unique lens ecosystem you have to kind of figure out and explore. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong. It's not very good in high ISO performance situations, so you've got to kind of navigate that. I just don't think it's the easiest camera when you're first starting out. When you're first starting out with weddings, you want to be able to just show up and get good looking images. You don't want to have to worry too much about your camera. You want to let the camera kind of stay out of the way. You really just want to focus on telling the story and getting the shots and being in the right place at the right time. There's just so much that goes into wedding filmmaking that the camera is the last thing you have to worry about. So if you're new into it, or you don't have to just don't want to worry about those things, I don't think that the GH5 is going to be for you. With that being said, the GH5 packs a ton of punch as far as image quality. It is a gorgeous looking image, and if you're willing to work around some of the shortcomings and sacrifices and some of those things that we mentioned, you can get a really, really good looking image out of it. The things that make me nervous about the GH5 for weddings are the low ISO performance. There's just, no matter what you do, you can obviously light certain things, but there's just certain times where you're gonna have to shoot with higher ISOs. And I know you can denoise it and things like that, but it just makes me nervous that you would run into a situation where the GH5 just can't hang. There also are just like the weird lens situation, like you can't use a lot of Canon glass, you can't use Sony glass obviously, or even Nikon. So you'd have to be investing in some Panasonic glass or some old glass that fits the Micro Four Thirds sensor. But again, I know that all of these things are things that you can work around, things that you can work with and still get an amazing, amazing looking film, an amazing wedding film shooting with the GH5 or GH4. So that's why I have to say maybe. I can't say no, like no, you shouldn't do it. I personally am not going to buy the GH5 as much as the spec sheet is very interesting with the really high quality 4K with the 422 color and the shooting 60 frames per second at 4K. Like all that stuff is really amazing. The in-body stabilization, all those different things are really, really tempting. But for me, it just doesn't fit with my style. Shoot with the things that I prefer, the things that I find important on a wedding day. And if you're wondering what I think is the best camera to use for a wedding, it's the one that I'm currently using, which is the Canon C100. I think it just marks a lot of the checkboxes that I think are really important, such as battery life, really small and manageable file sizes, still good image quality, and just like functionality and quickness and easy to use and all these different things, which are the reasons why I really love the C100. I can also understand people who don't love the C100. It is pretty big and bulky and expensive if you buy the new one. So yeah, again guys, it's all subjective. There's no right or wrong. I just really wanted to make this video as a way of kind of opening up the conversation, maybe opening up your eyes a little bit as to things to consider when purchasing a new camera. So I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I would really, really appreciate that. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys. If you guys have any questions, any comments, leave them below. I'm gonna be responding to you guys' comments if you have any. So thank you guys so much for checking this out. This has been Tyler from the Herrintons, and I'll see you in the next one.